News Talk 1150 WGBR. Welcome to Newsmakers, and please help me welcome my very, very special guest. I am so honored to have this gentleman sitting in front of me this morning, Col Joe Marm from Fremont, North Carolina. Well, originally Pennsylvania, but anyway, good morning, Colonel.
Good morning. It's an honor for me to be here.
No, you are so mistaken there, but that is really kind of you to say. I have looked forward to this interview. You and I actually met many years ago, and as I told you earlier, I had no idea at the time that you were a Medal of Honor recipient, and the incredible history that you have serving in our military. I just knew you as Joe back then, and I'm just so thrilled to have you here, and I know our listeners are as well. Let's talk about the boy from Pennsylvania who decided that he would enlist in the military. You went into the Army. What year was that?
I went in 5 days after I graduated from college, which was Duquesne University. I was shooting on the rifle team, which was coached by the ROTC department. And they said, Marm, you better think about what you're going to do. You're going to be drafted. And he said, you can enlist for the draft and then go to OCS. And if you like it, stay in. If you don't, you can get out. And Vietnam was not on the news very much back in the early 60s. So 5 days after I graduated, I was heading off by train down to Fort Jackson and Fort Gordon, where I did my basic training of 8 weeks and my advanced individual training 8 weeks, and then 6 months of infantry OCS, graduating in April of 65. Then on to Ranger School, which was a very good, very tough, my best preparation for Vietnam, where you're out actually in the field up in the mountains of North Georgia, then down in the Everglades of Florida for 9 straight weeks, patrolling and learning what soldiers do in combat. And
that was some intense training under the harshest conditions. Did it prepare you?
You're never prepared, but it gave me the confidence to lead my platoon. That was my first job in combat, to be a rifle platoon leader of 43 men. It gave me a lot of good preparation.
So you were serving as a second lieutenant on the day that you decided to, as this says, single-handedly attack an enemy position, and you were protecting your platoon.
Well, we were trying to get to a platoon that was trapped and surrounded on the side of Chu Pong Mountain in the central highlands of Vietnam. In the NVA, we were outnumbered about 7-1, and our unit, the 7th Cavalry, lineage goes back to General George Armstrong Custer out at the Little Bighorn. And there for a while we thought we were in another Little Bighorn, surrounded and outnumbered. We had lots of assets Custer didn't have. We had all the services giving us close air support, the Air Force, the Marines, and Navy, dropping their bombs close to on the enemy. It was the second attempt we made that afternoon to try to get to that platoon, and we had 2 companies, moving forward of about 200 men. And there were enemy in front of the entire front. In front of my position was some bad guys too. Because of all the battle noise, I tried to use sign language to tell one of my soldiers to run up there to the machine gun position and throw a grenade over the top and into the bunker. And he thought I meant throw it from where we're at, and he did, and it landed with all the trees and foliage around it. It landed in front and didn't do much damage. So I told another one of my men to shoot a bazooka. It's called a light anti-tank weapon. The acronym is LAW, L-A-W, for light anti-tank weapon. It's a very powerful weapon. It'll go through a lot of steel. I told my other soldier to shoot it, shoot the LAW into it, and he tried to shoot it, and it didn't go off because of all the humidity and moisture in South Vietnam. So I took the weapon from him, the bazooka, and rearmed it and shot it, and it went off, and it really picked up our morale, and we were able to move forward a little bit. There was a big cloud of dust and a big boom, and did some damage to the bunker, but it didn't completely destroy it. So rather than waste any more time, because it's starting to get dark, I told my men, don't shoot me up. So I ran across about 30 meters of open terrain because I wanted to get that bunker silenced, and went to the bunker and threw a grenade into the bunker, and then went around and finished off some more soldiers that were trying to shoot me. And that silenced the bunker, and I turned sideways. I turned to my men to, come on, let's get going. I got to get to the platoon. And they started moving forward, and somewhere in the back, another enemy soldier shot me in the jaw. It shattered. My left jaw went in through the jawbone and out the right side below my right jaw. So it kind of ruined my day. And
you think?
Yeah, one of my medics come up and patched me up, and I felt my face to make sure I still had a mouth there. I've never had any broken bones before, so anytime you get wounded or shot, it's pretty traumatic. So I was a couple of my soldiers helped me back to the aid station and where the battalion commander was. They were collecting all the wounded there. They were bringing in ammunition and water on helicopters, and those two helicopter pilots were coming in through some pretty terrific, called a hot LZ, hot landing zone, and they received the medal later on. Ed Too Tall to Fly Freeman and Bruce Crandall, and they're both featured in the movie We Were Soldiers, which is one of the better Vietnam movies. My name is not mentioned, but my action of charging that bunker is in the battle scene on the wrong day. They had it on the second day, not the first day. It was a very intense 3-day battle. We went in with 450 troopers from the 7th Cav and had 79 killed in action and 121 wounded in action. I was one of those that was wounded and evacuated, but it was a total team effort. And we eventually got that platoon out of there the next day. The enemy was attacking us, and we were attacking them, so it was kind of a slugfest for 3 days. And again, we had great support from B-52s. They were bombing, the side of the mountain, and close airstrikes from, the Air Force and the Navy and the Marine jets that were dropping their heavy ordnance bombs and strafing the enemy.
Doing everything that you could to get them out.
And we had the whole division behind us too, not like Custer, who was didn't have a lot of reinforcements coming in for him.
So once you got back to where the medics were, and were you taken out at that point?
Yeah, I was evacuated sometime, probably before dark, on the 14th of November, and then went through medevac helicopters in Air Force medevac to get back to the States, and recuperated at Valley Forge Army Hospital near Philadelphia for 3 months. And then I was kind of a walking wounded. My mouth was wired shut while my jawbone healed. I was very, very fortunate. Another inch and the bullet would have hit my jugular vein and probably killed me.
Very fortunate. And then you decided that wasn't enough. You wanted to go back and lead your troops once again. I
decided to stay, and I liked being with soldiers, didn't like war, but I felt I should pull my share of the hardship tours, and all the officers that were staying in, went back for second and third tours, particularly helicopter pilots and those that stayed in. So I went back as a captain a couple years later in '69 and spent the whole year of 1969 in Vietnam again, and spent part of that time as a company commander out in the field with soldiers. You talked about somebody that was your neighbor just before we came on, a POW.
Oh, yes. And that's another person that has impacted many, many lives in Wayne County, not only from hearing his story of what he went through, but also what he did for the youth here in Wayne County. Yes. We're talking about Colonel Heitshoe, and he was a friend of yours.
Yes, he was a friend. He lived in Pikeville, the next town up from Fremont, and just a great American. We shared many times together, and he started the junior ROTC program out there at Eastern Wayne, and that's very special. And
we're gonna finish talking about this in just a moment. I apologize. I've been so engrossed. It's time for us to take a quick break here and listen to our sponsors, but we will be right back with Colonel Joe Marm, Medal of Honor recipient, war hero, right here in Wayne County, after these messages on News Talk 1150 WGBR. News Talk 1150 WGBR. Welcome back to Newsmakers with our extremely special guest, Colonel Joe Marm, Medal of Honor recipient, Wayne County resident. I can't call you a native because you're from Pennsylvania, but that's okay. We claim you as our own, if we can.
Yes, ma'am. I came down in after I retired to my wife's hometown. She was her maiden name was Yelverton. She'd been following me around for a number of years, so we decided to move back to her hometown.
Well, we thank you for that, and we thank her for being the spouse of a war hero and just a military hero that anybody that serves, they're our heroes. So we thank you, and we thank her for all the years of dedication and worry and all the things that she had to do to be a military spouse. So thank you. We want to talk about, you have a book here, and I guess what I'm just completely fascinated by is when you said this book is in every middle and high school in all 50 states, and it's photographs and the history of Medal of Honor recipients, but only those who are living, not those who received it either posthumously or those that received it for the Civil War, which over half of the Medal of Honor about a third of the Medal of Honor recipients in the United States came from the Civil War, based on the numbers you just told me.
Yes.
And out of the millions of men and women that have served, a total of 3,500. Do you realize just how unbelievable that sounds, that you're sitting here, one of that many, just 3,500 people out of millions? That speaks so much of your bravery and what you did for us, for this country, and for the men that served beside you.
Very fortunate to be to be a recipient, and all the recipients say we wear the medal for all the brave men and women whose actions go unsung. Because in combat there's so much going on, you can't sit down and write up what happened. So I'm very, very fortunate, and I wear the medal for all the men that are in that battle with me. And there's one woman recipient. Her name is Mary Walker from the Civil War, and there may be more female recipients, as we hope we're the last living recipients, which means there's no more wars, which is what we all hope will happen. But with the war on terror and what's going on today, we have to have a strong defense, and we do have a great military in all the services.
Very well said, and that's beautiful that you wear it for all the men that served with you. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the difference in today's wars versus the war that you fought, or the wars you've fought. But let's talk about this book for a moment. If anybody wants to read more about this, let's tell about that book.
Yeah, the book was written by our battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, and the only embedded reporter that we had with us at the battle named Joe Galloway, who lives in Concord, North Carolina right now, and both great Americans. The colonel is retired as a 3-star and is still living, but the book was published in about 92, and they based a movie on the book. They had to cut it down to fit on the marquee. The book is entitled We Were Soldiers Once and Young, and the movie is We Were Soldiers, starring Mel Gibson and Sam Elliott, who I thought he played the command sergeant major, Basil Plumley, who made the movie. I thought Sam Elliott did an outstanding job with some of his one-liners. It's one of the better Vietnam movies, and it's pretty accurate. We say it's about 60 to 70% accurate.
That's not too bad.
They were making a Hollywood movie and not a documentary, so they had to...
Of course.
They had to make it
a little Hollywood.
The audience would like it.
Exactly. So let's talk about the difference between the wars we fought then and the wars we're fighting now. Could you ever have envisioned, and let's just go from 9/11 to today. We thought Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and 9/11 was the worst we could possibly ever go through, which is probably the same thing that many people thought from the Vietnam era. Now we're dealing with ISIS. And Congressman George Holding said there is no evil like the evil of ISIS. We've not seen anything. They make Al-Qaeda look, diminish their evil, so to speak. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
You have to know your enemy. A plug for my wife works one day a week for George Holding in Fremont.
Oh, okay.
Right in the city hall. So if anybody needs that are in George Holding's district, come up and see my wife, Deborah Marm, right in the town hall on Thursdays from 10 to 4.
And she's a delightful lady.
Thank you. But you have to know your enemy. And, we had to, on our ship, we spent 30 days going over to Vietnam on a merchant marine ship in 65. And we were learning as much as we could about our enemy so we could deal with him in the right way. And the same with today. We didn't have all the sophisticated communication means that we have today, but we had great soldiers and servicemen and women in 65, and the same today. They're just outstanding, all the men and women that are serving in all of our armed forces.
You're such a patriot. Do you feel that? I mean, do you realize how you come across to others that you are a hero? And I know I've used that term a lot this morning, but that just fits you best. But you're also a patriot. You're very much for our military, for this country, and you look on the brighter side of things.
Well, thank you. And getting back to the book, it's called The Medal of Honor, Portraits of Valor Beyond the Call of Duty. And it has the 3 medals of honor, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. The Navy medal is also for the Marines. And it has 125 recipients that were living. We're down to 79 now, living recipients. About 53 from Vietnam. We have World War II, 7, Korea 9, and the War on Terror we have 9 new recipients. It's a lot of fun to see the younger guys. I remember the first recipient I met was Eddie Rickenbacker, who was a legend, from World War I. And that just got my heart beating to meet and talk with him up in New York in '66, many, many years ago. But he was an old guy then, and I can see these young guys, looking at us as old guys too. So it's very special. But the book is great, and you can, hopefully it hasn't escaped the libraries at these public and private schools. And I think that's special that they can look at the book. And It shows a picture and it tells about the recipient on each page. It makes the citation come alive. A lot of times the Medal of Honor citations are very military, but in the book it cuts all that out. It tells the story in a very special way.
Well, I hope that every parent will encourage their child to check that book out or to sit in the library and go through every page. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have just under a minute, and is there anything that you would like to say that we have missed talking about this morning?
I know you did a great job, and it's just an honor for me to be here. Like I said when I first started, and this is a great county. I love the folks in Wayne County, and I learned some new skills when I retired. I learned how to take care of hogs with Goldsboro Milling. We have a finishing operation out in Fayro, right near where the B-52 went down. That's very special.
Well, you're very special. Colonel Joe Marm, thank you so much, and I hope you'll come back and visit with us again and delight our listeners as I know you have this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I am truthful when I tell you this is the saddest moment I've ever had on Newsmakers, to know that it's coming to an end, because I could sit and talk to this gentleman for hours. But I thank you for listening this morning on News Talk 1150 WGBR. Go out and make it a great day.